So many of you think it's the greatest love story ever told, and no, I'm not talking about Romeo and Juliet. I'm certainly not talking about The Notebook, whatever that was. I'm talking about Otis Burton and Susan Mary Payne. We did a short on them a few weeks ago, and it received more comments and shares than anything that we've ever done, and that is saying a lot. For whatever reason, people are obsessed with this short. Funny, when we created it, we weren't even sure if we would post it because it's not really in our sweet spot of greatest generation, and it didn't directly relate to the Civil War. It was just a really interesting story that seemingly had never been told before, so we gave it a shot. Now, for the few of you who haven't seen this, it's a really, really cool story. It's one of those rare shorts that has it all. A little bit of action adventure, he fights in the Civil War, he's caught by the Comanche. Obviously, it has romance, heartbreak, an element of faith or coincidence, and of course it has happily ever after. Truth be told, not many of our shorts have this many elements in it. Usually a good short has one or two elements, but to cover this much ground in 59 seconds is pretty impressive. I've said this many times, but our shorts hit you in the feels, and this is one that certainly does that. So we have received a ton of questions and comments about where's the movie on this, and I'll get to that in a second. But the reason why people ask that is because it does seem to have this kind of cinematic arc to it in just 59 seconds, mind you. So with that, let's dive into some of the most frequent questions we get asked on this one. Now, the first one is by far the most frequent question. Is this story real? And the answer is yes, it's real. It happened. We found it in the Lancaster Intelligencer. That would be Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It was a short item on February 13th, 1884, and it was on page 1. Evidently, it was a pretty slow news day. Don't ask me why I was perusing that paper. I don't recall. I'm guessing I caught in some type of rabbit hole of links for certain types of Civil War stories, and it led me to that somehow. I'll put a link in the description box to the full article so you can peruse it yourself. But this is where we actually found the story. It was published, it was in a newspaper, it is real. Now, the other question we get is, does it mean the news article is 100% accurate? Well, I can't really answer that. I'm guessing there was an element of fake news even back then, but there's no way to really fact check every element of a newspaper article from 150 years ago. And by the way, that's not really our job. We're doing a short on an interesting item that appeared in a credible newspaper 150 years ago, but we're not submitting this for a Pulitzer. Of course, now, we did additional research on Otis and Susan Mary Payne. They did really exist, they're real people. There's actually some census and genealogical information on them, and even you can find their grave sites. Like I said, we can't fact check every aspect of the newspaper story, and that's not really the point of all this. But for those of you who are curious as to where the story came from or question its legitimacy, the answer is the Lancaster Intelligencer of February 1884. So the second most frequent question we've received is, where is the movie on this? There's no movie on this because my guess is nobody in Hollywood reads the Lancaster Intelligencer from the 19th century. If it's not in the Hollywood trades, it doesn't really exist to agents and studios, I think. Look, I just think it was too obscure, and there's never been anything more on this story other than the tiny blurb in that article, and now our short. So I'm guessing there will be a movie on this someday. Perhaps I'll write it myself. I've just finished writing a World War II screenplay. More on that in a future video. And I agree with all the comments that this should be a movie. As I mentioned, in just 59 seconds, this short has a cinematic arc to it, in part because it has all the elements of a great story, in part because my brother Tom did an excellent job with the look and feel, the music, the pictures, and so forth. It has romance, it has heartbreak, action, suspense, an element of fate or faith, however you want to look at it, and it has happily ever after. Again, this feels like a movie. This video has been viewed almost 1 million times across multiple platforms, so I'm guessing there's a young agent type in Hollywood somewhere who's trying to figure out how to make money off this. Like I said, maybe I'll write the movie treatment myself, we'll see, but this will definitely be on the big screen someday, I'm predicting. So the next question we get is, Why didn't the Comanche kill Otis? And I have no idea. I am not an expert in this area, and the story doesn't elaborate. Maybe they needed him for hard labor. Maybe they were sympathetic. Maybe they just hadn't gotten around to it. I really have no idea. Maybe the story's misidentified his captors as the wrong Native Americans. I really just don't know. I certainly think it's plausible that he was ambushed, captured, and made to do hard labor. I think that's plausible. I think it would also be plausible if he was just killed. Yeah, I agree. But again, we're just following the newspaper story, so who knows what their motives were? Look, it's a fair question. It's just one with no real answer to it, so I don't know. So related to that question, we get the other question. Why did the Comanche leave them alone after Otis found her house on the plains? Well, again, we don't know that either. I don't know their motives. The story doesn't elaborate on the chase other than that it took place over 3 days. We do know that. We don't know if they left the Comanche territory, where exactly the house is located, and the like. We just know that he rode for 3 days straight before coming up to her house. We don't even know how long the Comanche really gave chase. I'm not an expert in horse chases, but I'm guessing a 3-day nonstop ride could cover hundreds of miles. So it's unclear where she was located or how much chase the Comanche really gave. Maybe they quit after 20 minutes, who knows? I just don't know the answer to that one. Next question. What happened to Susan Mary Payne's husband? In our video, we just say that she was a war widow. In the Lancaster story, if you read it, it goes into a little bit more detail, saying he was a Confederate soldier killed during the war, and that she was left alone to work the family farm. No details on what battles, what regiment, anything like that. Now, we do know that Otis Burton fought for the Union, so the question came up, did Otis kill the husband in battle? Highly doubtful. The odds on that would be infinitesimally small, so I doubt that. So, which gets to the last comment or question, and this isn't uncommon in a lot of our videos, but was this a matter of fate, or faith, or random occurrence, or something else? I've discussed this in other videos before, particularly the one on Robert Hillman and his mom in the parachute. You know, was this divine intervention? Was it simply a matter of fate? Were they always meant to be? Was it just a random and happy occurrence? Look, I certainly have my own thoughts, and I know most of you have your own, and we've heard a lot of them in the comments. And that's the beauty of this video and some of our other videos too, like Robert Hillman, is that it's open to your interpretation. I confess that I do love these videos that sort of call into question the normal edicts of time and space, as I like to say. I love that, but it's really up to you to decide. Did they really have a happily ever after? Well, the Lancaster Intelligencer story goes into a little bit more detail and mentions that they got married and they were living together when the article was written. Again, that was in 1884. They were still alive then, somewhere in the Southwest United States. Now, we know that Otis Burton died at the age of 61 in 1898, and Susan Mary Payne lived on until 1927 and never remarried. And we also know that they had 3 children, Viola, Otis Jr., and Marcus Cassius, which I love. Clearly someone in the family was literate and educated. They mostly likely named him after Marcus Cassius Sceva, who many consider, by the way, to be the greatest Roman soldier of all time and a bona fide badass. If you don't believe me, Google that guy and you'll see how tough he was. So I just find it fascinating that they named their son after him. So we covered a lot of ground here. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be doing more of these longer behind the scenes videos on some of our more popular shorts. It's easier this way than trying to answer all the comments. Until next time, I'm Nick Ragone.